The email arrived on a Tuesday. Just another notification among dozens, but something about the subject line caught my eye. Watch this alone, from my cousin Elijah. No other text, just a video attachment. I remember hovering over it for several minutes, cursor suspended above the play button, feeling a strange premonition. Some part of me already knew that once I clicked, nothing would ever be the same. The rain outside my office window created a perfect soundtrack for what I was about to witness. Sheets of water streaking down glass, distorting the city beyond into amorphous shapes and colors. I adjusted my tie, a nervous habit from my corporate days that never quite left me, and pressed play. My name is David Mercer, and that moment marked the beginning of the end of everything I thought I knew about family. The video quality wasn't great, clearly shot secretly from a partially concealed phone, but the audio came through with perfect clarity. My family's dining room, the one I'd sat in countless Sunday dinners, my mother's collection of Hummel figurines visible on the sidebar, my father's reading glasses perched on his nose, and my younger sister Victoria toying with her wine glass. They were talking about me. David has no idea what it's like to struggle, my father was saying, his voice carrying that familiar undertone of resentment. All his fancy suits and downtown apartment. Meanwhile, we're scraping by. My mother nodded along. He owes us. After everything we sacrificed for him growing up, the least he could do is help out more. Victoria laughed, a sound I once found charming but now seemed laced with malice. He's such a burden when he comes over. Always criticizing, always judging. Like he's better than us because of his precious company. Useless burden, my mother agreed, with such casual cruelty it stole my breath. If he knew what was good for him, he'd be more generous with his family. I paused the video, feeling suddenly lightheaded. Useless burden. The words hung in the air of my empty office like a physical presence. I loosened my tie, struggling to reconcile the people in that video with the family I'd been supporting for years. Because that was the sick joke of it all. They had no idea I was already paying their mortgage. Had been for 7 years, since my company, Altura Capital, had its first major success. The irony would be laughable if it weren't so painful. Every month, $6,200 transferred from my business account to theirs, which they promptly paid to what they thought was their mortgage company. In reality, it was a subsidiary I'd set up specifically to handle this arrangement. They believed they were making their payments. I knew I was covering the vast majority of them. I pressed play again, masochistically drawn to hear more. He thinks he's so important with that company of his, my father continued. Altura Capital. What does it even do besides make him feel superior? Victoria snorted. Tax shelters for rich people, probably. My mother leaned forward, her voice dropping conspirationally. Well, regardless, I think it's time he contributes more. He's not married, has no kids. What expenses could he possibly have? The video ended with their laughter, and I sat in silence, rain still pattering against the window, now sounding less like gentle background noise and more like ammunition. Elijah had added a short message at the end. They don't know I recorded this. Thought you should see who they really are. I'm sorry, cousin. I closed my laptop with a decisive click. 7 years of lies. 7 years of paying their mortgage while they sat around their dining table calling me a burden. Something cold and resolute crystallized in my chest. A decision, instant and immovable. I would stop the payments. Let them face the consequences of their ingratitude. My phone pinged with a notification. A message from my sister. Hey, can you make it to Sunday dinner? Mom's making your favorite pot roast. I stared at it for a long moment before typing back. Wouldn't miss it. The rest of the week passed in a strange, detached fog. I went through the motions of running my company, meetings, calls, decisions, but my mind kept returning to that video, to the casual disdain in their voices, to the utter disconnect between their perception and reality. I found myself opening my cloud storage, reviewing the documents that outlined the arrangement I'd created, the mortgage transfer agreement, the payment schedules, the legal framework that allowed me to help them while preserving their pride. Or so I had thought. That's when I discovered something even worse. A notification in my account activity showed multiple recent logins from an unrecognized device. Someone had accessed my cloud storage. The timing matched perfectly with what I'd seen in the video. They knew, or they suspected. They were digging for information about Altura, about my finances. With rising dread, I checked my message history. There, buried in a folder I rarely accessed, I found evidence of a group chat I wasn't part of. Family planning. No David. Somehow, they'd accidentally synced it to my cloud. Against my better judgment, I opened it. The most recent message was from my mother. I think we can get at least $2,500 more from him monthly. He's clearly hiding how successful that company is. My father. If he refuses, we can remind him of all we did for him. The guilt always works. Victoria. I found some interesting documents in his cloud. Looks like he's more connected to Altura than he lets on. Could be useful. They weren't just ungrateful. They were actively conspiring against me, planning to use emotional manipulation to extract more money. The betrayal cut so deep I felt physically ill. I immediately called Laura, my financial advisor. If they miss a mortgage payment, I asked her without preamble, what happens legally? David? Her voice carried confusion at my abrupt question. Well, since the property is technically held by your subsidiary while they make payments, you would have the right to convert their status to tenants. Why? What's happened? I need to know all my options, I said, voice steady despite the storm raging inside me. And I need the paperwork ready, just in case. Sunday dinner arrived, and I drove to their suburban home with a strange sense of calm. The house that I had kept them in, without their knowledge or gratitude. The red brick colonial with its manicured lawn and gleaming windows that they thought they were paying for themselves. They greeted me with smiles that now seemed predatory, hugs that felt like constraints. We ate pot roast that tasted like ash in my mouth as I waited for them to make their move. It came during dessert. David, my mother began, her tone sickly sweet, we've been talking as a family, about finances. Oh. I took a bite of apple pie, feigning ignorance. Things have been tight lately, my father continued. Property taxes went up again, and Victoria's car needed repairs. My sister nodded, her expression a perfect mask of concern. And the mortgage is just crushing us. We've been so careful with money, but it's just not enough. That sounds challenging, I said neutrally, watching their performance with detached fascination. We were wondering, my mother ventured, reaching across to touch my hand in a gesture that once would have seemed affectionate but now felt calculated. If you might be able to help out. Nothing major, just a little family support, maybe $2,500 a month. The audacity was breathtaking. They were already receiving over $6,000 from me monthly, and now they wanted more, while continuing to call me a burden behind my back. I smiled. I'll have to look at my finances. Let me think about it. Relief washed over their faces. They thought they had me. Victoria even winked at our mother when she thought I wasn't looking. Take all the time you need, my father said magnanimously. Family helps family, right? Right, I echoed. Family helps family. After dinner, I excused myself to use the bathroom but took a deliberate wrong turn, pausing outside the kitchen where my mother and sister were cleaning up. Do you think he suspected anything? Victoria's voice was low. Not a chance. He's always been oblivious. Good, because those Altura documents I found might be our insurance policy. If he refuses the money, there's that old tuition loan he claimed he paid off. My mother's voice sharpened with interest. What about it? I think we could convince him there were terms he missed, or at worst, threaten to spread some rumors about his business practices. You know how sensitive clients are in his field. Even a hint of impropriety could destroy him. They were planning to blackmail me, using fabricated threats against the very business that kept a roof over their heads. The cold resolve in my chest hardened further. 10 days, I told them when I rejoined the gathering. I'll have an answer for you in 10 days. They didn't realize the significance of the date. It was when their next mortgage payment was due, the payment I would no longer be making. The next morning, I met with Laura and my legal team. We went through every document, every agreement, ensuring everything was airtight. "Are you sure about this, David?" Laura asked, concern evident in her eyes. "It's your family." "They stopped being family the moment they decided to exploit me," I replied. The hurt had crystallized into determination. "Prepare the residence termination papers. If they miss the payment, when they miss the payment, I want to move immediately." The 10 days passed slowly. I received daily messages from my family, checking in with false cheerfulness, reminding me subtly of their difficult situation. Each message strengthened my resolve. 3 days before the deadline, Victoria showed up at my office unannounced. "I just wanted to see where my big brother works," she said brightly to my receptionist, but her eyes were calculating as she scanned the space, probably assessing my success, mentally tallying what else she could extract. "Victoria," I greeted her, maintaining my facade. What a surprise. "I just wanted to talk," she said, perching on the edge of my desk uninvited, "about the family situation." I said 10 days. "I know, but—" She let her expression fall, vulnerability seemingly painted on like makeup. "I might lose my job, David. The economy is so uncertain, and with the mortgage payments already so difficult." Her performance was remarkable. I had to give her that. The trembling lip, the worried eyes. Once it would have worked perfectly. Once, I would have moved mountains to protect her from any hardship. "You should be grateful, you know," she continued when I didn't immediately respond. "Not everyone has family willing to support them like we supported you." And there it was, the guilt card, played exactly as they had planned in their secret group chat. "I'll have my answer in 3 days, I repeated, my voice level. As promised. She left disappointed, but not defeated. They still believed they held the upper hand. The day of reckoning arrived with appropriate weather, dark clouds gathering on the horizon, promise of a storm. I watched the clock tick toward 5 p.m., the deadline for the mortgage payment. Laura had set up an alert to notify me the moment it was missed. At 5:01, my phone chimed. Payment not received. At 5:05, I signed the papers that legally converted my family's ownership claim to a tenancy agreement, one I could terminate with proper notice. At 5:10, I crafted a simple email. "I've considered your request for $2,500 monthly. In reviewing my finances, I discovered something interesting about your mortgage. Please meet me at the house tomorrow at noon. I'll explain everything then." Their responses came quickly. Confusion. Questions. But underneath, I could sense their anticipation. They thought I was about to increase my contribution to their lives. They had no idea I was about to dismantle the foundation of lies they'd built. I slept surprisingly well that night. The decision was made. The path was clear. For 7 years, I had carried them financially while they denigrated me behind my back. That ended tomorrow. I arrived at the house exactly at noon, the termination papers in a manila envelope under my arm. They were waiting in the living room, expressions eager. "David," my mother began, "we were so confused by your message." I held up a hand, silencing her. "I need to show you something first." I pulled out my laptop and, without preamble, played Elijah's video. Their faces contorted in shock, then embarrassment, then defensive anger as they watched themselves discussing me as a useless burden. When it ended, the silence was absolute. "Where did you get that?" my father finally demanded. "Was Elijah spying on us?" "That's your concern, not what you said." I laughed humorlessly. But that's not all I discovered. I opened the screenshots of their family planning, no David, group chat. Their plots to manipulate me for more money. Victoria's plan to blackmail me with fabricated claims about a loan I'd already repaid. "You accessed my private cloud storage," I continued, my voice steady despite the rage simmering beneath. You invaded my privacy while plotting to extract more money from me. Money that would add to the $6,200 I've been paying monthly for your mortgage for the past 7 years. The shock on their faces might have been satisfying under different circumstances. What are you talking about? My mother whispered. We pay our mortgage to Eastern Bank. No, I corrected her. You pay it to a subsidiary of Altura Capital, my company. I've been covering the majority of your mortgage for 7 years while you sat around this table calling me a burden. Disbelief, confusion, then the slow dawn of horror as they realized the truth. Why wouldn't you tell us? My father asked, his voice suddenly small. Because I wanted to help without making you feel indebted, I replied. I wanted to preserve your dignity, your pride. I never expected gratitude, but I certainly never expected this. I gestured to the frozen video still on my laptop screen, their faces caught in expressions of disdain as they discussed me. Yesterday, I continued, you missed your mortgage payment. That's impossible, my mother objected. I sent it myself. To my company, yes, but I've terminated the arrangement, which means legally you defaulted on your payment, which means, according to the agreement you signed 7 years ago, an agreement you clearly never read carefully, this house now reverts fully to my ownership. I placed the manila envelope on the coffee table between us. These are residence termination papers. You have 30 days to vacate the property. The explosion was immediate. Denials, accusations, tearful pleas. Victoria lunged for the papers, but I stopped her with a look. You can fight this legally if you want, I told them quietly. But every document is in order, every payment recorded. Every action I've taken has been within the bounds of our agreement. You can't do this to your own family, my mother sobbed. The manipulation's so transparent now that I could see it for what it was. My family, I echoed. My family called me a useless burden while taking my money. My family plotted to blackmail me. My family accessed my private files looking for ways to exploit me. I stood, straightening my jacket. As far as I'm concerned, I have no family. Victoria made one last, desperate attempt. What about everything we did for you growing up? The sacrifices we made? Parenthood isn't a loan with interest, Victoria. Children don't owe their parents for raising them. That was their choice, and any obligation I might have felt was fulfilled several times over with 7 years of mortgage payments. I walked to the door, turned back one last time. 30 days, and don't bother contacting me again unless it's through your lawyer. As I drove away, rain finally began to fall, washing over my windshield in cleansing waves. For the first time in years, I felt unburdened, free of the weight of unappreciated support and unacknowledged sacrifice. They tried, of course. Tearful phone calls, angry emails, appeals to distant relatives. But the evidence was irrefutable, the legal position unassailable. Elijah stood by me, confirming what he had witnessed and recorded. Laura called a week later. They've retained counsel, she informed me, but it's just for show. Their lawyer has already privately acknowledged they have no case. And the house? Will be yours free and clear in 23 days. What will you do with it? I considered the question. The house held memories, some good, some now permanently tainted. But beneath the betrayal and hurt, I found no desire for vengeance, only a wish for closure. Sell it, I decided, once they're out, and donate the proceeds to the scholarship fund at my old university. Let it help someone who actually appreciates the opportunity. On the final day, I drove past the house one last time. A moving truck stood in the driveway, my family loading the last of their possessions. They didn't see me, and I didn't stop. There was nothing left to say. The house that had been built on lies would soon belong to someone else, and the false foundation of my family relationships had crumbled beyond repair. Some might call my actions harsh, unforgiving, but standing in the ruins of betrayal, I had found something unexpected: self-respect, the knowledge that I deserved better than to be anyone's useless burden. My name is David Mercer. I learned the hard way that blood doesn't guarantee loyalty, that support doesn't ensure gratitude, and that family, true family, is defined by respect, not obligation. Sometimes the family we're born into isn't the family we deserve, and sometimes the hardest choice is also the most necessary one. As Altura Capital continues to thrive, I've found new ways to help people who truly need and appreciate it. Anonymous donations, mentorship programs, a foundation that provides interest-free loans to struggling small businesses. I never heard from my parents or Victoria again. Occasionally, Elijah updates me on their lives, living in a modest apartment, managing on their actual incomes for the first time in years. It brings me no joy to know they struggle, but no regret either. They made their choices, as I made mine. The house sold quickly, the proceeds creating educational opportunities for deserving students. Sometimes I drive by the old neighborhood and see new faces in the windows, a new family creating their own story within those walls. I hope it's a better story than ours, one built on honesty, not deception, on mutual respect, not exploitation, on real love, not the hollow performance of it. Because in the end, that's all we had. A performance, a house built on lies, destined to fall apart at the first real test of its foundation. And though the collapse was painful, it cleared the ground for something new to grow, something real,